Hey everybody. All right, in this video, I have a very, very special guest returning. His name is Dre. You guys know him as VashSky. Dre, welcome back, buddy.
Hello there. Good to be back. Good to be back. I'm actually in some different digs right now on the vacation with the family. So hopefully it all turns out okay. Hopefully the internet holds up, and we're all good to go.
Yeah, well, we hear you perfectly right now. Now, before we get started, let everybody know where they can find you on like Twitter, social media, or what have you.
Yep. On the best platform you're going to find me on is Twitter. So it's at VashSky, V as in Victor, ASHSKY.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so Dre, we got a lot to talk about today, buddy.
Man, we got a whole bunch of things to talk about. I mean, where do you even begin? It's crazy. You sleep one day, the whole world shifts. It's insane.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So the first topic, we're going to get into the quarterly earnings, and that's a biggie. So,
yeah.
But before we do that one, I wanted to bring up a quick subject that actually Dave from Fresh Baked brought up the other day on one of his videos, and I'll link it up above so you guys can check that out too. But it was in regards to the ripple effect that COVID is having on the Harbor Boulevard businesses. And Dre, you know, you're familiar with all this stuff. Like, you know, the whole Gateway project was a big point of contention to these businesses, you know, that the bridge that was going to go over from the parking structure to the resort was going to take away that foot traffic on Harbor Boulevard, and they fought it, and they successfully fought it because Disney ended up canceling it.
Right.
In this video with Dave, he was kind of mentioning, what do those businesses though think now that Disneyland's closed and all of that business has dried up? What's going on with these Harbor Boulevard businesses? What are your feelings on this subject?
No, I've actually some people have brought this up in my circle, just saying, hey, I think they appreciate Disney a little bit more now than perhaps they did before. You had an astounding amount of business up and down Harbor Boulevard there. Hotels were going in an exponential rate along just in the general Anaheim area surrounding Disneyland, but especially up and down Harbor and some of the surrounding streets there. It's a big moneymaker. There's no question. The amount of foot traffic that sees per day when Disneyland is fully operational is astounding. I believe the McDonald's located on Harbor just across the street from Disneyland right there, that would be next to the Panera Bread and the Howard Johnson. You're talking one of the most successful franchises in the world.
Wow.
That's how much business that gets. And if you see the lobby, it's extraordinarily larger than maybe a typical McDonald's would be. But it really speaks to the level of volume that gets. Of course, going back to the 90s and refreshing that area, getting rid of some of the neon, some of the signage that wasn't cohesive, creating that whole area like they have. I mean, it's astounding what they've done. It's the numbers coming out of some of those hotels. It really is remarkable. But they're hurting. They're hurting because they are basically closed. They are closed. They don't even have the amount of income required that would be needed to pay even a skeleton crew at this point. So I think they have a new rekindled love for Disney.
Well, and here's an interesting thing. When I was watching that video, I was thinking to myself, because Disney's been, they've been kind of like maybe not a priority, but they eventually, I think, want to make a third park. They want to expand Disneyland Resort.
Yeah. And
it got me thinking with this whole COVID situation and these businesses being completely shut down and business completely dried up.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, is this an opportunity almost? Is there a silver lining to this where, because of the economic downturn due to COVID and these businesses shut on a harbor, is it possible some of these businesses are more willing to sell to Disney now because they're hurting?
Yeah, I think so. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I know capital expenditures, big time purchases are kind of a no right now with Disney because of their cash flow problems.
Yeah.
But if the opportunity were to present itself, and I mean in a way like, look, it would have to be in line with the kind of long-term plans for the Disneyland Resort. You couldn't just have a random hotel, a couple blocks away sell and have Disney buy it. It would have to fit within, okay, is it near the old Strawberry Fields, now the Toy Story lot? Is it, what was the shopping district called there? The Garden Walk, yeah. It would have to be positioned strategically to make sense, especially I purchased that large right now. But I do think they are circling the tires on all those things. It's like, well, if it does make sense, do we actually do it? And I think that makes them a little bit more susceptible than they normally would be. And I think you have owners and operators of some of those hotels, shops, and so forth saying, well, normally we would never sell because the business is so good, but maybe you have people coming into their retirement years. Maybe it's like, maybe I want to get into a different business. I don't know how long this is all going to last. Right. And they just want to, they just want to sell to Disney to get out. That could certainly happen. You also have other chains, other businesses that would like to get in on that when it does start getting back up. So Disney might not be alone in some of those acquisitions along Harbor Boulevard.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. And a lot of those companies, like, there's the McDonald's, like you mentioned, and there's the IHOP, and I think there's a Mimi's Cafe that isn't too far either. A lot of people think, well, those are huge companies. They're never going to sell. Like, why would they sell? Like, they're huge. But you know what? Just down the street from me, maybe less than a mile or two, a Denny's went out of business. So it's like if a lot of these big corporate, franchises, they, that particular location isn't cutting it. They cut it from the team basically. So yeah, like you said, I mean, it's possible they might sell to Disney now in times when they really need to just kind of.
I think they're going to be far more receptive to it. I think it's like, hey, I don't know. The details of any of the finances of the people operating the various businesses along Harbor and in the surrounding Anaheim area. But if times are tough, because state tax is piling up, bills are piling up, it's like, can we get out of this with an acquisition? And I think they're going to be far more receptive to it than they were before. And look, as we said in one of our discussions previously, this whole thing will speed up everything that was already going to happen. Right. So assuming, I don't know what the financial status of that Denny's was like before, but if it was already on the way to closing, obviously this will speed that up.
Right. Exactly. So it's very interesting. And it was a great video that he made on Fresh Baked. I really kind of spurned my imagination. I was kind of thinking like, absolutely. Wow, like that's a good point. This kind of hit. And now the game has kind of changed, It's changed completely. I mean, that's I think I heard reference to the 7-Eleven that's there right at the corner of Catella and Harbor, if I'm not mistaken. There's like a 7-Eleven that's there, and then there's a couple of hotels. There's a strip mall across the street or whatever. That's like one of the most popular 7-Elevens as well. Wow. And there's a lot of those businesses in those strip malls there, and it's like, what happens to those little guys that maybe Disney wouldn't necessarily pay any attention to before? It's tough times because there's no convention business either. Right. Exactly. Very, very interesting. So we're going to switch gears here a little bit, and we're going to talk about the other day. I think it was like earlier this week, Tuesday. Disney had their quarterly earnings, report. And, from what I can tell, it seemed a little better than people thought. What are your feelings on on the results from what you saw?
Well, we know it was going to be bad. Okay. All right. So they're a studio, the Walt Disney Company is, or at least that's a sizable portion of their business. They have diversified. That's not releasing movies. Like that's, it's the Tony Stark. It's a, weapons manufacturer, not making weapons. It's kind of like that for Disney right now. They have no product being not only produced. There are some meetings, there are some things taking place, but a large segment of that doesn't have any traction whatsoever. On the flip side, you're not releasing any films at all. Say what you want about the days of World War II, but at least in World War II, you could at least, release films domestically. Here, all theaters essentially all over the world are completely shuttered and closed. Wow. And even if they were open, there wouldn't be enough new content to get people in there. So it's from the studios division. It's a very, very scary time. Parks, experiences, and products revenues for the quarter decreased 85%. That's pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. But think about it. I mean, just 30 years ago, it used to be that the theme parks division for the company was 75% of their revenue. Wow. That's changed since then, but you can only imagine how bad it would have been before. They have diversified, but unfortunately, all of their, diversified investments when it comes to like cruise lines, and we're going to set up resorts outside the theme parks like Aulani. We're going to get into sports, get into television. All of that is really on the downswing too. I mean, it's extraordinary. Some of the numbers, I believe some of the earnings for ESPN were just released, and those ratings are down like a lot, even with sports being back, which is very interesting. Segments like A&E are down. You just look at it, and we're in some serious territory. I will say, to your point, they didn't look as bad as maybe people had thought. I think Walt Disney World, with it being open, with all 4 parks being open, with the amount of crew that they have there now, I think it is slightly profitable. But Bob Chapek just went into it and said we had a lot more cancellations as the virus numbers in Florida increased. So until we start seeing, steady virus drop off, a lot of those people who were going to vacation to Walt Disney World, I think they're gonna wait until better times, or at least for safer times. I will say there has not been an outbreak of this virus linked back to any of the parks, and that's not just Disney. That's including all of the theme parks in Central Florida, which is astounding because a lot of people said that wasn't even possible.
Well, and to your point, I saw that same article too. And, Disney's only been open since mid-July, but Universal and I think SeaWorld have been open since first week of June. So that says a lot. They've been open for like 2 months now. I know. I was particularly shocked. I knew it hadn't happened because if it did happen, we would have heard about it. Yeah.
And it just hasn't happened yet. I've not seen anybody go to their union reps and tell them, hey, look, I got COVID or whatever. You got to shut this place down. I haven't heard any internal reports, nothing from my insiders. It's been pretty clean. I think that's the most surprising thing. My thoughts and opinion on it, we've talked about this in a couple discussions, but if you can be open safely, I think that should be explored. I think they should go down that route. Disney has found a way to be extremely safe, but still have an operating, theme park resort. And it's been successful on that front, a lot more successful than I thought. They put very stringent measures in place. They have the enforcement that they require to make people feel safe. And in my opinion, it is the safest place you can be.
Yeah. And, I think it's going to get better financially when Disneyland Resort opens. And a lot of people kind of poo-poo Disneyland because it's a small resort, but it actually carries, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but I think it carries a lot more weight than people think. And the reason being is because Florida is very much tourism based. Everything is it's a vacation. You stay for a week. You gotta book a flight, stay at a hotel. It's an outside, out of state, out of country tourism based resort. Yes. Disneyland has elements of that, but they're more local based. So people can really, like I have an annual pass. So my pass is paid for. I'm ready to go. I can go to Disneyland and all I got to worry about is gas and food. So it's no different than going to the mall, and that's the case for a lot of people out here in California. And I think because of that, I think that Disneyland is going to be, when it finally reopens, is going to be financially healthier. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's going to offset some things a little bit. I think it's going to be really good for the company.
I made the assertion publicly right when this whole thing first happened. I said, tourism will go down dramatically. It'll be like the 1970s oil crisis all over again, when people couldn't get to the Vacation Kingdom or Walt Disney World at that time. It really did a number on their business. Similarly with 9/11, when people couldn't get to Walt Disney World, that they again suffered. And so from my perspective, it was, okay, it's those things all over again, worse, and the fact that, capacity is restricted as well. But the locally driven theme parks are going to be far more better poised to absorb this financial hit than the vacation destinations like Walt Disney World or any of the theme parks in Central Florida, for that matter. There was internal data and research done by Disney, just going back about 10 years ago, and according to that data, as much as 75% of the annual population for Disneyland, that means how many people have gone there annually, 75% of those come from within 250 miles.
Wow.
The exact opposite is true with Walt Disney World. I believe it's about 30% locals, 70% tourists. I should say out of state tourists. So that becomes a huge issue when you got to book so far in advance, when you got to actually get flight, rental car, lodging accommodations. All of those things, they really are barriers to entry. And there was a recent poll done by Morning Consult that stated that 72% of American adults say that they are uncomfortable visiting an amusement park right now. Wow. So consumer confidence is also way down. So you think about it. You're trying to convince people in the middle of a pandemic with, maybe they have some cable news, stations on, and they're looking at the daily counts or whatever on the sidebar all the time. You're asking them to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for a once in a lifetime vacation. That's not a really good selling point, right? That's a hard sell, I should say.
Definitely.
But Disneyland was far more able to absorb that because it's all locals anyway.
Right, exactly.
The issue is, and we gotta get into it a little bit.
Let's do it.
Get into a little bit, okay? Here's the issue.
Hit me with it, Dre. Hit me with it.
I'm gonna hit you. I'm gonna say stuff that's like, we're getting into the politically driven territory because it this whole thing has become politicized somewhat.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is no. I don't think there's any mistaking it. I don't think there's. You have a certain political party that is, how should I say this, a little bit more open to economic sectors within their municipalities being open than others, right? We know what the dynamic is in California. We know what the dynamic is in Florida. Florida, they've been able to open, they've been able to operate, they've been able to do well, and their numbers have gone down. California, they've locked up completely. Part of it is you just have a political party that just feels differently about having sectors of their economy and certain industries open than the other. And unfortunately, that's really hurting Disney right now, because the one saving grace, the one theme park that could really kind of, shore up the numbers and actually have some revenue come in, and you could do some creative things to generate that business and to maximize those profits, is not allowed to operate.
Right.
Because of who's in charge.
Right.
I tell you what, this is very interesting. Florida has a governor of a certain political party. That governor won his gubernatorial race by 30,000 votes. It was 30,000 people essentially deciding, and they didn't know this at the time, but they essentially decided that Disney's theme parks in Florida were going to open. That's a tremendous amount of power. That's a tremendous, just the butterfly effect from those kind of things is enormous.
Right.
But had that happened another way, we could be looking at some devastating figures from Disney. I mean, this could have worked out completely differently. Whatever the quarterly earnings reports were, that could have worked out totally differently had those 30,000 votes went the other way.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And it makes me think, and I mentioned this in a video recently, and this is political as well, but you mentioned California and, like the Governor Newsom and stuff. Now, no matter what side of the political aisle people are on, there's no debating that, the blue states take more donations. They get more donations from Hollywood. It's just a fact. Whether, you're a Republican, Democrat, we can all acknowledge that,
I think that would be a fair assessment.
Yeah. And I brought up in that video, I wonder what the threshold is going to be. Like Bob Iger, Bob Chapek, even like Brian Roberts of Comcast. Eventually, these billionaires who donate heavily to the Democratic Party and these blue state, politicians, eventually, when their wallets are affected, I can't imagine them not getting in the ear of these governors saying, hey, look, you know what? I got to reopen my movie theaters. I got to get some movies back in there. I got to reopen my theme parks. Like, I think that time is close. Or if it hasn't already happened, we wouldn't know. But eventually, these bigwigs are going to start getting really frustrated with this. Yeah. They're going to want to reopen their businesses again. Money talks.
No, remember, Bob Iger was in the ear of the governor of California right when this first thing, right when this took off. The governor wanted to shut down completely. And Bob Iger was attempting to say, hey, look, at least allow us to have, put that control into our hands. If we feel it necessary to shut down, at least we should have an autonomous decision over that rather than have it be the governor decree, essentially.
Right.
Eventually, Bob Iger did capitulate and went along with the shutdown just like everybody else. But the idea was, hey, at least allow us to make that decision because this is so huge. The ramifications are massive. We were just talking about, Harbor Boulevard. I mean, the rippling effects it has throughout the local economy, the consumer base, it's huge. The implications are massive, and they want to have that kind of control. So I agree with you. I'm surprised we haven't heard more conflict.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I can almost assuredly say that they're in the ear of the governor right now, attempting to convince him to open this place up. And Florida has shown you can do it safely. What I would do if I was Bob Chapek or Bob Iger, the Bobs, is get the governor of California on a plane, have him go to Walt Disney World and say, this is what we could do. This is safe. Show them the procedures that they're doing, show them a kind of a daily operational experience at the theme park, and show them, hey, look, we can translate this to the California market, and we can be open, and we don't have to allow this bloodletting to continue.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Now, I did want to also bring up, and this is a small point before we move on to Disney Plus, but I wanted to bring up the quarterly earnings report. Bob Iger wasn't there.
Yep.
It was our guy Bob Chapek,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm actually, I don't want to say I'm proud of Chapek. That sounds really condescending, but I'm I'm
Oh,
I'm
good boy. Good
good
boy.
boy, Chapek, all by yourself.
There you go.
But like, I am, I feel, I'm starting to feel a little better with Chapek. Like when he first took the reins back in February,
Mhm.
and for the first couple months, and I understand COVID hit like around that same time, but I was really critical that I don't feel like he was taking the reins. He was kind of letting Bob Iger still run the show a little bit. And it was pretty apparent, and I think when you start off, you really got to take charge and really, take the initiative. And I don't feel like he did that. I feel like he's starting to come into the role a little bit. I feel like I'm gaining a little more confidence in Chapek in that, okay, this is our CEO. It's no longer, Daddy Iger, helping him out. And like, it's Chapek is the guy now. And he's it's starting to show. And that's giving me a little more confidence. I feel a little better now. What are your feelings on that?
I think so. I think there's been some criticism behind the scenes, or I should say, criticism in the public sphere and the private sphere about his image right now, and just the optics of him not being out front and center all the time. And I think he's being coached up on that as we speak. Like, hey, you got to get out there. You got to show that you're the leader. You got to show that you're in control of this thing, that you're leading this company through this tough and difficult time, that you're the guy, that you're not just leading on Iger. You're the guy right now.
Right.
And so I think that all speaks to that kind of line of thinking. I am happy that he's taking a far more front of camera role, that he's at least, optics wise, at least how it looks, he is the leader and he is stepping up. I think those things are good. I'm much more interested to see what kind of decisions are born from him versus maybe other parts of his company. What he's deciding to do and how that affects the company. I'm much more kind of, I don't know. I look at actions more than gestures, like getting in front of the camera and stuff like that. But I am happy to know that he's at least, kind of taking these things seriously. He's out in front. He's taking responsibility, and he's leading from by example.
Yeah. And, I did want to bring this up, and this might be a little bit of a hot button issue, but I think that I do want to bring it up because I do think that I can definitely see this on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Iger, and again, it doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a pretty political CEO, and he's made no bones about it, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. He's progressive, and he makes no bones about it. He tweets about it all the time. A lot of his actions, decisions in the company go in that direction. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's Iger, and he ran the company the way he feels fit. Nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Chapek, I don't get that same energy from Chapek. I don't feel like Chapek really, like Bob Iger is sort of like an Oprah Winfrey or a Jay-Z, these billionaire celebrities who sort of, but they also have their foot in politics, and they're very vocal. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't feel like Chapek is that guy. And I feel like when Iger leaves and Chapek takes full control, I think we're going to see, and this might be a good thing for some and it might be a bad thing for others, but I think we're going to see less of the activism or the political leanings in the content and even just opinions from the CEO. I think we're going to see less of that from Chapek. That's the feeling I get. I don't think Chapek really cares. That's just my opinion. But what do you think on that? You think that's going to change?
So Bob Iger, I got a couple of things. Bob Iger has said openly that he at least this has been the mantra inside too, that Disney is a progressive company, that they are kind of, leading the way, leading the charge essentially, in the kind of forward-thinking content that they have. You know, that's the way they position themselves, and they're proud of it. But that comes with some complications too, because, you know, we've stated before, when you go down that route, and you can, it's fine, you do turn off some other people.
Right.
And so, especially now, it's like, do we really want to target one group at the expense of another? I think Bob Chapek is like, hey, look, we got to maximize the market. We have to maximize our reach. I'm not interested in offending anybody.
Right.
But in terms of actually having progressive content or having things that are a little bit more politically minded or politically savvy, for him, I think it's more, hey, look, I don't want to sacrifice or necessarily sacrifice one consumer for another. If we can approach both and collect both, I'd be more willing to do that. I want to go in that direction. And I think that's beneficial to the long-term health of the company, because once you start choosing sides, you're also choosing consumers as well, you know, largely.
Right.
Here's the other thing that's going on. The tensions between, you know, we're going to get a little bit more political. I'm sorry, we have to, guys.
Yeah,
we have to.
Totally cool.
We have to, because there's a lot of stuff playing out here on the world stage that has implications for Disney.
Right.
Tensions are high between our country and a certain country in the East. I think you know which one I'm talking about.
Right.
They have 2 resorts there.
Hinted.
You know, and it's not Japan. So there you go. There you go. I don't want to. I'm trying to tread this carefully here.
Right.
Tensions are going high. We could be on the verge of an economic Cold War. At this point, Disney requires as much market share as possible, because they might be on the verge of losing one of their biggest markets that they have.
Wow.
You know, and this is interesting too. Again, we're going to get a little bit political, but this is all playing out here. I'm going to try to be real with the viewers. The Attorney General of the United States called Disney out specifically on its dealings with this country. They said, you know, he went over and he said, hey, you know, Disney was always, you know, kind of an American company and worked with us during World War II and produced films and stuff like that. And now they're getting into bed with this other country, and it's for short-term economic gain, but it's actually not even to their benefit. Tensions are growing high. So I think that also plays into it a little bit, like, hey, we need everybody to kind of shore us up here.
Right.
We can't go in a progressive direction that's going to lose our market share in any of the market that we have our products in. We really have to be accepting of everybody, because we're going to need all of them to keep the apparatus afloat here. Right.
And, you know, you brought up a great point there. That's interesting. And when it comes to the 2 parks, you know, and I'll say Shanghai and Hong Kong, when it comes to those 2 parks, do you see a day, maybe even soon, where Disney sells their share of both of those resorts and they license them out like Tokyo? Do you see a day where that's possible?
This is that scenario that you've just outlined there, I have forwarded to a number of people as likely to happen within the next 10 years.
Wow.
It's become just so volatile that if you have an ownership stake, you risk losing it entirely. You risk having it forcibly removed from you from one country or another. And so you have to really, like, hey, are we in this for the long haul? Are we looking for an ownership stake, or are we just looking for a royalty fee at this point? It's very likely that will happen. That a decision will be made one way or another. So it's like, okay, well, let's get on the forefront of it and try to absorb as much money as possible before it's cut off.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. There's a lot going on between
It's insane, man.
The virus and the geopolitical stuff. It's wild. It's wild. I wanted to switch gears a little bit because I thought this was really interesting. So Disney in that quarterly earnings report announced that they're gonna take Mulan, the live action Mulan, and they're gonna put it on Disney Plus with a paywall. So you're gonna have to pay, I think it's like $29 to basically unlock it. I think once you pay the $29, it's on your Disney Plus forever. You know.
Okay, because I was unclear about it. You think it's unlocked completely from then on?
That's what I'm hearing from multiple people. They told me that once you pay for it once, it's basically unlocked on your account.
Okay.
So it's on your account now. You can click on it, watch it whenever you want. That's what I'm hearing. If you guys heard differently, comment below. But several people now have told me that it's a pay one time and you have it on your Disney Plus.
Okay. Yeah.
But now, what are your thoughts on that? And what are your feelings on the ramifications of a decision like that? Because that doesn't really just happen in a bubble. That there's bigger things that might come from that. What are your feelings on that, Dre?
Well, I got a lot of feelings, like I do with that. That's just how it is, right? I think it's very interesting how after the quarterly earnings report, after hearing all those dreadful numbers, this is what everybody was talking about afterwards on Twitter. I thought it was hilarious. It's like the company is trying to stay financially afloat during one of the most tumultuous times in its history. And you talk about $30 for Mulan. It's like, oh god, okay, whatever.
Right.
So you saw Universal produce or release Trolls World Tour back in the spring. Incredibly successful, to the point where the CEO was so excited that he stuck his foot in his mouth and said, "Oh, we're going to do this from now on." And AMC was not having it. And that's what started that whole little tussle until very, very recently. They have actually worked out their differences. AMC will continue to release Universal films, but their windowing practices will be changed, which is very interesting. This goes hand in hand with that a little bit. Disney's strategy is slightly different. They have their own platform, which they launched, thankfully, before COVID-19. By the way, their subscriber numbers are through the roof. They're way ahead of expectations, partly due to the pandemic, of course. But people were kind of, they were taken aback by the price. Oh, $30, that's huge. Well, not necessarily. Right. Think about this. For a family of four going to Mulan, and this is kind of what you want to stick your mind into, because it's a family picture. They produce family entertainment. The idea is not just one person go, but ideally 4 people or more.
Right.
When it comes to a picture like Mulan, though, think about how much it would cost for a family of 4 to go. Let's say, tickets range from anywhere from $10 to $15. We'll go 12. You have a family of 4. You're talking $48 to go. That's just for tickets, and then that's everything else. In. Yeah, that's just to walk in the door, and everything else, after that, popcorn and everything. But now you look at a picture like Mulan, and just to go back, that $48 doesn't go directly to Disney. About anywhere from 40 to 60% of that money goes to Disney, whereas that's taken in by the theater owner, or the theater operator, I should say. Okay, well, if we take that to the Mulan example, if we half that number, remember it was $48, it now becomes $24. So we're right back there to that $30 number. I think that's why they chose it, because in terms of the actual revenue coming in, it's actually pretty on par when you all break it down like that. But obviously they are also pricing it towards people who are going to have view parties, watch parties. You're going to lose some revenue. So to balance it out over people who maybe are, a single person watching it from their apartment, or a family of 4 or whatever, that's where that $30 all comes in line right there. So that that pricing strategy was very, it was chosen for a reason. And I think from that standpoint, I think it's a wise move.
Yeah, no, I do too. I think that, they really tried. They really tried to put this in theaters. I think it was pushed back like 2 or 3 times. Yeah. They wanted it in theaters. I think Disney has a lot of faith in this movie, and rightfully so. I saw some of the footage at D23 at the studio panel, and I was blown away by it. I'm really excited for it. I can see why Disney was really holding out hope they can put this in theaters, but obviously I think they come to the realization it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon, and they have other movies and they have outside competition that are going to compete with those release dates in theaters. It's really hard to find a spot for it. We'll put it in Disney Plus. Now, this is interesting in that, okay, so Mulan happens. Great, perfect. I'm probably going to pay the $30 and watch it. That's great.
Yeah.
What does this mean going forward, though? Do you think Disney's going to do this going forward? Are they going to opt for some movies where, you know what, we're just going to we'll put it on streaming? Or maybe you can watch the new Star Wars movie. Hey, fans, you want to watch it a day early? $30 on Disney Plus. You can avoid spoilers, avoid the theaters. You can watch it the day before the new Avengers movie or the new, it kind of opens up a whole new world. Pardon the pun, the Disney IP thing, but it kind of does open up a whole new world to this. Like, what do you feel of that? I mean, is it possible they're going to really double down on this?
Look, let's go back to your original point. Make no mistake, they wanted it back in theaters. They wanted this thing to play in theaters, but not even the domestic market. The international market's not there, largely.
Right.
For this thing to play. So it's like that just wasn't going to be a feasible option. You look and saw Onward, what happened there. I mean, that was catastrophe. They lost their shirt and a half on that movie. I mean, they really that one's not good. It's just the market just isn't there to put it out in theaters. So it's like, okay, well we have Disney Plus, we have this venue, let's put it in there. I think it works out. Now, your point to the future beyond, there's no mistake. Like, and it's funny because Bob Iger had it in this. He had this whole thing like 20 years ago.
Right.
He was like, okay, hey, look, let's just like release a movie on every platform day one. Like, it's going to be on Blu-ray, digital streaming, and the theaters on day one. Obviously, the theater owners balked at that idea because it's just like, well, it's going to cut us out completely of a large swath of the business. I mean, we're talking like 80% of our business is going to go away overnight if that decision was ever made. That's why AMC pushed back so hard against Universal. Well, and they were trying to find feasible solutions for that. It was like, well, what if you were to be able to purchase a ticket that gave you access to like a vending machine on the other end, where you could actually buy the movie from there? It would only be released there, but you'd have to buy a ticket to do it. That was an idea. I know there have been a couple ideas, like maybe a ticket has a barcode on it or a individualized code that you can use towards the purchase of a movie on Disney Plus or whatever. They've tried to do some things to at least let the theater owners get a portion of their business. But yeah, I think it's going there. And look, AMC capitulating to Universal. They have moved the windowing from as many as 70 days to like 3 weeks.
Wow.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Could you imagine getting a Blu-ray for something 3 weeks after it's out in theaters?
That's incredible.
Unheard of completely. I think we're going there. We're getting there. And this has forced a lot of, people who on both sides not wanting to rock the boat, saying we better get in somehow because we're going to lose our shirts one way or another here. We had to produce this. We had to get this content out. The question mark, and this is why Mulan is such a big deal. This has never really been tried before in this way outside of Trolls World Tour. is this going to work for our platform? Is this going to work for our movies? Is this going to work for, there's a lot of questions going into it. And I think that this is the trial balloon. If it works out, again, if this makes a lot of money, that's money that's not split like it would be. That's money going directly back to Disney's pocket.
Wow.
If this works out in a big way, and I think it has the potential to. You cut down distribution costs. You don't have to share that revenue with the theaters and stuff like that. I think they would love to get into this game.
Oh yeah.
The question is it going to make enough money for us with the marketplace as it is? Can we get this thing internationally? Do we make back our money that we've invested in this movie, $250 million or more? All those questions need to be answered before going into it. But I can definitely assure you, this is where they want to go. They've wanted to go here for 20 years.
Now to kind of play off your point a little bit on this, because I prefer watching movies at home. I love watching movies at home.
Yeah.
That's my preferred method to do so. So I fully support the Mulan move. One concern I do have, though, with this move is a slippery slope in the sense that not that other movies are going to necessarily start doing this. It's just that it's going to become kind of excessive. Like, for example, in the video game community, there's an issue with microtransactions. A lot of fans complain about microtransactions and what have you. Do you feel like we're going to get to a point, because I do think this will be a success. Do you think it'll get to the point where it's like you go on Disney Plus and it's almost like an app store to the point where everything has a paywall? You think it's going to get to that obnoxious level? Or do you think that, what are your feelings on that?
Well, so during a movie's initial run, it's going to feel like an app store a little bit, in the sense that you have to pay for these things up front to get access to them, because it's kind of the way how it's got to be. Disney Plus, this is kind of the difficult thing about Disney Plus. Yeah. It wasn't really priced for profitability. It was priced for the absorption of market share. It was priced competitively, and it worked. It's getting a lot of people, but it's not necessarily driving revenue. So it gets tough. I think you're going to have, this speaks to your point too about, hey, if you want access to a Star Wars movie, you got to pay early for it. I don't think that would work necessarily if the theaters were involved still, because obviously you got to kind of go through them. And that speaks to another issue too. I believe your film, to get an Academy Award nomination, for example, has to go through the theaters. That's really one of the ways that they've. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, it's a whole kind of thing there, for sure. But to keep the theater owners involved. But I can see it if the theaters weren't a part of it. Let's just say this thing, this is our new norm. I can see it where the Disney Plus has particular features that would have come out in the theaters first, that where it's like, okay, for 4 weeks, if you want access to this, you have to get to this price, and maybe that drops off a little bit until, hey, it's free for everyone. So maybe it drops off a couple of dollars per week that it's out until it's free for everybody. But I don't. The reason I don't see it becoming an app store is because you have to pay for it monthly.
Right.
If you didn't have to pay for it monthly, I could definitely see it becoming like an app store where you have to pay for every single little thing, and you have a collection that you build up and all that kind of stuff. I could definitely see that. But because they price it to where it's a monthly subscription service, I don't see that coming. Although we'll say this Mulan thing, assuming it's successful, will open the door for a bunch of content to be thrown out like it is going to be.
Yeah, like Chapek mentioned, this is a one-time deal, and I was like, no. If this does well, Chapek, you're gonna.
No way is a one-time deal.
There's no way.
If I've learned anything in 2020, the things that were temporary aren't so temporary. That's the one thing I've learned.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So it'll be very, very, very interesting. Now, before we go, because I love your insight, Dre, and I want to kind of leave you like, is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you want to bring up, you want to discuss, anything on your mind? I want to leave it up to you before we leave.
A couple of things.
Okay, cool.
You really like the architectural styles being utilized in Avengers Campus.
Yes.
I forgot to bring up the fact that Scott Drake is behind the project. He's the project lead on that. Scott Drake being the guy who was the lead in terms of the Star Tours 2, the Star Tours overhaul that happened back in 2011 or so.
Yeah.
And he was also the project lead on Tomorrowland. I wanted to bring that up because Scott Drake is one of my favorite Imagineers. And when you said that, it didn't occur to me when we were live, and it was like, oh no, it was Scott Drake who, So if you like the architectural style, he's definitely the guy. His website's phenomenal, by the way.
Awesome.
Look at his art and stuff. The other thing I wanted to bring up was future projects going forward.
Okay.
We're going to be in rough shape here. I'm not going to mince words here. We're going to be in rough shape. Some of the things that, maybe like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway at Disneyland, I'm looking at these financial numbers. I'm not seeing that as a possibility, at least in the very near future. That doesn't mean that they won't happen, but some of the stuff connected to Imagineering right now it's like we just don't have the capital to put that out. So while concerning, that's just kind of a reality of the situation. And the other thing, I think the other thing that's really big right now is just the geopolitical stuff going on with that country in the East. It's very concerning. That is the kind of the thing to watch out for, because like I said, and this is very interesting. When Hong Kong went down, did the Disney company make an announcement about it going down, or did we hear about that through the grapevine?
I could be wrong. I thought we heard it through the grapevine from what I understand.
That tells you all you need to know about who's really in charge over there.
Right.
And that's concerning. That certain entities can make those kind of moves, and Disney just has no power when it comes to those decisions. I think it's very, very interesting. As to be a little bit more optimistic, I think the numbers in Florida, in terms of visitation, will go up as things kind of settle in. Florida's numbers, their virus numbers, are down almost across the board. So that's very, very good. I think things will really stack up. But I think the things to watch are, what's going on overseas, what's going on in California. Hopefully we can get this open soon. I think a lot of things will begin to normalize when that happens. And I'm hoping for the best, really.
Yeah, hopefully. And that's interesting what you said about Mickey, Minnie's Runaway Railway. From what I understand, they haven't really. If you follow BioConstruct, I'm sure you do. On Twitter, he or she, actually, I'm not sure. I don't
know.
I'm not sure, but they do really great work, and they've taken some overhead photos recently, and really all they've done is cleared the area. I don't even think they've done any steel work or even foundation work yet.
No. And that's the thing. I mean, they said they were going to have materials come in that they've already pre-ordered because you had to do these things months in advance, and this kind of whole thing worked out. It's just a staging area for materials. That's it. That's where Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is right now. That's the case all over the world. Really, everything has come to a dead halt because you can't. I mean, they were up to $25 billion a year on capital expenditures and investments for the theme parks. It's just too much of a cost to incur right now to have active construction going on when revenue is cut so drastically. I think Disney's in terms of bookings and capacity is like 20% of what it normally is, at least in Walt Disney World. So it's dire straits right now. You bring up BioReconstruct. What's very interesting about this, we just heard about the Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. That's a big revenue generator for the Florida theme parks. Bio Reconstruct had taken photos of the mazes constructed, of them ready to open for October, or at least getting to that point, and they pulled the plug. That tells you where everything's at right now.
Wow.
That they can put that stuff down, they can install that stuff. They were actually in the process of hiring scare actors. And
unbelievable. And
they cut it. That tells you all you need to know, really.
Yeah, that's why nothing's ever concrete. That's why when you hear all this talk, like, oh, well, they already started building Mickey Minnie. Well, that doesn't mean anything. Or they've already started building Epic Universe. Well, doesn't really mean anything. Universal, like you said, they were already hiring people for that event. They were building the mazes, and like that, they canceled it. I mean, it's pretty telling.
It's a very volatile time. May you live in interesting times. That's definitely the case right now, yeah.
yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Dre. Thank you, brother, for coming on. I do appreciate it. Before we go, if you can let everyone know again where they can find you on social media.
Best place to find me, Twitter, @VashSky. That's V as in Victor, ASHSKY.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Dre, and thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.